Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a video all about my goals and intentions for 2026. I put a lot of thought into trying to find ones that I feel like I will actually do. So let's just jump right into them. I feel like they all kind of work together in some way. Anyway, let's start with the one that I feel like is the most exciting and everyone kind of loves, which is the number of books that I want to read this year. So just to give some context, so last year in 2025, I read 52 books, and that was kind of like a push. Like, I was up until midnight trying to reach my reading goal, but I'm so glad that I did. But I feel like sometimes having a reading goal that I feel like I meet or I just meet will sometimes stop me from picking up larger books, or sometimes will kind of like make me feel a bit stressed and a bit pressured to kind of keep reading, even if I'm feeling like in a bit of a reading slump or I have other hobbies that I'm doing. Sometimes it feels like I need to keep going and keep reading all the time, and I think because of that sometimes I'll put off books that I'm interested in, but because they're longer or that you need to read a bit slower, that sometimes I will put off those books because I'm like, oh no, if I try and read that and I take too long reading these long books, then I won't reach my reading goal. So this year I'm just deciding to knock it back completely and just go with 26 books. This is a goal that I think I will 100% achieve. I know that I will read 26 books in 2026, but I'm hoping that setting a lower goal will take off some of the pressure and allow me time to read the longer books that I have and the books that are a bit more gritty and a bit more in-depth, and so I can take a bit of a longer time reading them. This will be great because I can just then take my time with those books. I probably will read around 40 to 50 books anyway, and maybe I might even read more just because I've taken that pressure away. I feel like in the past reading goals have been so fun because I was like getting back into reading a lot more and having reading as like such a big hobby that they were kind of they were more motivational to, like, you know, keep up the hobby and like keep up with the flow of reading. But I feel now that I'm in such a flow of reading and it's so natural and such a habit of mine that actually I feel like I can take that step back and be like, I'm going to read, I'm going to set my goal lower and try and focus on different things this year. And then my next goal is to complete 5 of my ongoing series. So I have a bunch of different series that I've kind of and I have a habit of starting books series and then never finishing them. I think especially things like Mistborn, which the books are quite long, and longer fantasy series, I kind of I haven't been picking them up because they are quite long and take more time. Now that I feel like I'm freeing myself a little bit from that kind of like internal pressure to be reading a certain number of books, that I can pick up these series and kind of complete them without any pressure or stress, and actually kind of like take as much time as I want with them, which is kind of the idea of what I want for this year. So I have books like the Mistborn series, I have the Emily Wilde series, I've got the final book to read for that, the Faebound series as well, I think the final book is coming out for that, Hellbent Ninth House, Alex Stern series as well, I believe I could finish if I just put some time into it. There's also other books I want to read. I want to start reading some Robin Hobb, and I feel like that series might take up a bit of time. I feel like having more freedom to read will help me finish some series. And then similarly, I also really want to get back into reading some classics and taking the time with classics and rereading some of my favourites. I kind of really want to go back to the things that I really loved when I first started reading, and that was the Bronte sisters, Jane Eyre, Wuthering Heights, and I want to read some from Anne Bronte. I kind of just want to slow down and like reconnect with the classics that kind of made me fall in love with reading in the first place, and kind of feel immersed in that kind of writing and all of the things that come with reading classics. And I feel like all of this kind of combines for this other goal of how I want to read a lot more intentionally this year, and tackle the longer reads on my shelves. I feel like I have slowly been feeling like I need to keep up with this goal to read a certain number of books, and I think this year I'm just taking a year off it, basically. Give myself permission to read slowly and to read the books that I really want to read, no matter how long they take, and also not be too bothered about how many books I'm reading at the end of the year. And I feel like that just works in conjunction with all these other goals I have. And then the final goal that I really have is about diversifying my reading. So I look back at my 2025 reads, and apparently only 15% of my books were from diverse authors, so like BIPOC authors or queer authors. And I want to include kind of stats of like LGBTQ plus and BIPOC authors and try and read a little bit more diversely. So according to my 2025 spreadsheet, 15% of my books were from diverse authors, which I feel like is kind of abysmal, and I'm hoping that at a minimum I want to get this to 40%, but I'm hoping to get it to 50%. I've been doing lots of research and really looking at the books that I'm interested in, the kind of themes and styles of books that I'm interested in, and trying to find books from around the world and from different kind of places, different authors. I'm really trying to branch out and do some of my own research into books that I'm interested in, as well as ones that are quite popular. I feel like it's quite easy to fall into the trap of reading books just because they're popular and which ones are current at the moment. And I'm not saying that I'm not going to do that at all, because I probably will. There's lots of popular books that I do want to read, but I do want to put in a little bit of effort for the books that aren't marketed as much or as heavily, that actually sound really interesting and have some really good themes and different perspectives that will be different from my own as well. So I've been compiling lists. I've been looking through lots of story graph kind of like challenges and stuff. I think on Jenny at This Story Ain't Over, she's done a video about like an anti-brain rot challenge where you're kind of critically reading and also diversifying your reading. And there's also a story graph challenge for that. There's so many recommendations of different diverse authors and different authors that are of all kinds of different identities and around the world, different places around the world, from like translated fictions, authors from different places, authors of different identities, just so you get like that diversity and just difference in the things that you are reading. And I know that for some people this isn't important, and I'm not going to sit here and say everyone should be doing this, but I think it's important. It's important to me, and I think that it really does just add so much interest and difference, and it really grows your kind of worldview and like your view of books, your critical thinking skills. It's just a benefit, I feel like, to kind of try and incorporate different types of books into your reading. So I want to try and get to 50% diverse authors and books on my 2026 reads. Those are primarily all of the goals that I have, but I wanted to also go through some of the challenges that I'm planning to do for 2026. So I have the horror bingo board that Sarah hosts at Wicked Reading. This runs from October to October. So this one started in October 2025 and it'll be running all through until October 2026. So I've made a bit of a start on this actually. I think I'm actually like 20% of the way through it. So I'm kind of happy with that, and I need to like check off the ones that I have already read on this TBR. I'm trying to read a lot more horror books because it's one of my favourite genres. I really love most things horror. I love horror films, I love horror games, so it makes sense that I also really enjoy horror books. I feel like it's not as popular of a genre as other genres like sci-fi and fantasy or romance, and like that's even like reflected when you go into bookstores, and the horror section is always so small. There's literally like one bookshelf. Even in like the bigger like kind of Waterstones and stuff, I find it hard to find places that have a big kind of horror selection, so it feels a lot easier to try and find them online or through the internet rather than in person. And I think that's all of the like main goals I have for this year. I feel like some of them have popped up quite a lot over the years, e.g. reading classics, but I think setting my goal lower and taking time to be more intentional and be a little bit more slow and allowing myself to just be a slow reader and read my books slowly again, I think will really help me enjoy them. And actually I think I will read a similar amount of books as I usually do because I've just taken that pressure and number away when I don't think it's really adding anything to my life other than making me feel internal pressure to meet that number, if that makes any sense. I feel like reading goals and reading challenges and like reading a certain number of books a year are so like personal to how you feel in that moment and what you're doing and what's going on in your life. Like everyone's, I feel like, is so different. So it's not like, I'm not saying that reading challenges are bad and make everyone feel like that, but it made me feel like that last year. So I'm like, this year, my reading goal is a nice easy number. It's not too much of a priority over the books that I'm reading. It's very much, I want a quality over quantity kind of year this year. And I really want to reread some of my favourites like Wuthering Heights, like Jane Eyre. I really just want to go back and be able to think about and just look at them with my like fresh adult eyes, which will be so interesting. I did this watching Buffy. I watched Buffy when I was younger as a child and I loved it so much. I was so obsessed with Buffy when I was a kid, and I watched it last year as an adult, and I was rewatching everything. I knew exactly I knew what was happening in the series. I knew what big kind of things happen, and I knew most of the time like the whole timeline of what happens throughout Buffy, because if I had just watched it that many times. But it still felt kind of fresh and new in the sense that I was looking at everything differently through a different perspective from when I watched it when I was younger. It was so interesting to see how I had a different perspective on it, and I feel like that's what's going to happen with the books like Wuthering Heights and like Jane Eyre. I feel like especially like parts of the kind of relationship and those kind of more adult themes that maybe when I was younger I didn't fully understand because my brain hadn't developed properly. So that will be so interesting, and I'm so interested to see how I find those books. But yes, those are all of my goals. Let me know what your goals are for 2026, or what your #1 goal is, and let me know how many books you want to read this year if you set a goal. Everyone's reading so different, so I love hearing about how everyone else decides what number of books to read and what numbers they decide. If you like this video, please give it a like, and if you want to see more from me, then consider subscribing, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!